please do. We've got a water glass in tow. Excellent. Hey, look, my name is Alex Asher. I am the CEO of LearnCube. One of the things that I feel that I can offer for you today and obviously in the future is that I do have a lot of experience in helping particularly online language schools really succeed online and really grow their business. And we've done that with companies like Babbel. We've done it with a bunch of different companies, particularly before COVID and before physical schools really were forced to kind of take the plunge and actually really use online, not even just to complement their business, but actually at the moment to possibly operate their entire business. So this is something I've got a lot of enthusiasm for, a lot of passion for, and a lot of experience with. And I'm joined here by the magnificent Thom Jones, who should introduce himself.
I don't think I can back up magnificent, but yeah, my name is indeed Thom Jones, slightly embarrassingly. The background I've got is teaching and running schools, particularly physical schools. The last sort of 10 years, I run a consultancy company and I do training and work with schools that are looking to break into new markets and looking at the product that they offer. So over this particular period, I've been working with a lot of schools that have suddenly had to go online. So working with a lot of teachers to work through that, and a lot of agents that are now looking at selling online or buying online and whether they will do that. And a lot of schools that are trying to be online or trying to give an online offering.
Great.
If that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Now I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I really wanted to cover a few points. So what we are going to be talking about is, of course, selling the intangible. With the time that we have available, we're not going to be able to get too much into the details of this, but this is something that Thom and I, we have lots of discussions, even through webinars, so we really enjoy these topics and can kind of dig into the details. But for now, what we are going to be covering are these areas. So I did want to kind of discuss the market. It's something that I'm very familiar with. I've been actually writing a book over the last, I've been running over the last year, and the funny thing is that things have changed so much, even with COVID-19, that there's new updates and new things happening. But I'm going to talk about the market. We're going to be talking about what students are actually buying. We're going to be talking about what schools are selling, and maybe if there's a match or a mismatch, and why that might be. And then, of course, we wanted to give you some tips so you've got some takeaways at the end of this. With that in mind, let's talk about it. So I did want to help understand the market. For a lot of particularly physical schools, it did seem when they were kind of coming to us with asking for an online school solution, there was not so much knowledge of what was already there. Online language teaching is certainly not new, and possibly you already know that. Some of the, I guess, key differentiators in the market have been very human-powered language teaching, as we like to call it, and looking at peer learning, where two peers might be helping each other learn. One-to-one tutoring, of course, has been around since Skype began in 2004, and small groups also were a big part of the mix. Now, since COVID-19 happened, what we did see is, almost every language school on the planet convert almost everything that they were doing in person to online. And what I would like to say is that is a new offer in a way, because no one was really offering large classes because the value was actually in that there were smaller classes online. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. And then the other thing that a lot of people thought of with online was self-study. And so that's where you've got Babbel and Duolingo that have really been at the front of the pack there. But again, it's important to know that they exist, because self-study online, again, is not a new thing. So I wanted to set that base so that physical schools knew what the current environment was, and then maybe it might help understand how to set yourselves apart and how to play to your strengths, because that's going to make you more successful. So this is an area that I think is super important, which is, what are students really buying? And I'm going to leave the answer to Thom Jones, of course, because he knows everything.
Well, thanks for that. The students are essentially buying two things, really. possibly 3. So the thing one that they're buying is an outcome because they want to get to IELTS 7.5 or whatever it is to get them to a new salary, a new job, a new anything. But the other thing they're trying to buy is an experience, and what they want to do is have some kind of experience that is is a kind of formative experience, a really exciting experience, and something that makes them feel that they've learned as a person as well as a linguist, and that's something where the physical school has really shone in the past, because the Babbel and Duolingo sort of stuff are able to offer the brass tacks of the grammar and the brass tacks of the language, but they're not giving that really exciting kind of buzz of immersive learning in a country, in a culture, or in a place where that language is used. And I think that's where the difference has always been, and that may change.
I agree. So experience is huge. I think this is the area that a lot of people have missed, is that just as students, and let's just start with sort of international travel, when students bought that, they were buying the experience. It wasn't just, I'm going over and buying classes. So when students were changed to doing online, what they did feel was they were getting maybe the classes to a degree, but also they weren't getting the experience. So, and that experience also online for a lot of students has maybe not felt as professional or as well-rounded as they were experiencing in person. And so this kind of is starting to get at, I think, the mismatch that we may have seen, and why maybe the value to the students hasn't been as high. So they've been less willing to, certainly, to purchase in the future without seeing that there's the same amount of value if they're going to be paying the same price. And I think this is probably a good point to sort of jump into then, is like, what are you actually selling? Because if what you're selling is not what students are buying, then there's going to be a major problem for the business.
And what I'm finding is a lot of my clients are saying to me, right, well, we want to do self-study, and we want to do all of this, and we want to be like a part of people's lives, like an app, and we want to do this, and that's lovely, but there are already other people that have been doing that really, really, really well for 8-10 years. So coming into a very crowded market that already has clear winners and trying to offer that on a much, much smaller scale does seem to be, a stab in the dark, really, and that's a shame, because it's often businesses that have a lot to offer, and what they're trying to offer is what everybody else does.
Yeah, bang on. So with, I guess, that in mind, we are moving to a point, well, I mean, I think we're still going to see lots of ins and outs of this roller coaster that we're in right now. And one of the things we're certainly noticing is the people that want to be teaching online, they're going to do a lot better than those that are just needing to and forced to. And students can really smell that difference. And I think that's why it's so important that the product, and that doesn't mean just the classroom itself, but the experience of how do they buy from you? How do they engage with your administrative team? How do they engage with maybe your principal? Because that's an important feature in a school. One of the things that gives me huge optimism and hope, particularly for all physical language schools, is you've already got a lot of structure, and you've got a lot of things that people really love. Like, people love that personal touch, the fact that there is this ecosystem that lives around them. And I think there's no shortage of opportunities to express that creativity online. Sometimes it's just the tools, or maybe rethinking things that may kind of open these opportunities up. And I know, Tom, you've got some particular opinions on this.
Well, I think it's just that idea that, communication evolves, doesn't it? And we talked about this before in terms of history, that, when new forms of communication come in, people don't like them often, and often think that they're not useful, or that they've only got a very limited use, or and actually, when new forms of communication come in, we don't really know how to use them. And I think the interesting thing that's come out of this COVID-19 crisis has been that a lot of people who dismissed online learning are now going, oh, actually, we delivered it, it was good, and students are going, actually, I enjoyed that and I learned stuff. And a lot of teachers who didn't want to do it have had to really up their game and get into it, but also have come out with some brilliant and creative ideas about how to do that. And a lot of schools have done that too. in terms of how they reach out to students and how they maintain their community and how they maintain their brand, dare I say, do you know what I mean? And how they put that online. You know?
Yeah, I think one thing, when you're selling your online school experience, it doesn't all have to look the same. And maybe it's possibly the way that the tools are being used, but it doesn't all have to be group classes. And it doesn't all have to be private classes either. I think students do, particularly in an online setting, and particularly if you're trying to really go for a very intensive course, you are going to need to communicate how rich and, well, diverse, let's call it varied as well, that the classes will be. Because I think certainly what we saw initially was just this idea of just Zoom classes for 20 hours a day. That I think that was quite quickly kind of dismissed as like, okay, that didn't work. Because as I say, before COVID-19, there was no real market for it. And I would still be a little bit hesitant if there is still a market just for like large group classes with nothing wrapped around that to make that a more comprehensive solution.
Nobody wants to spend 4 hours a day looking at their screen. I mean, obviously everybody under the age of 17 wants to spend more than 4 hours a day looking at their screen, but nobody wants to, as a learning experience with 20 other people, be sat in a Zoom room for 4 hours a day. That's not,
right.
You know, and they don't need to either. And I think that's what's exciting about the online opportunities now, is that there's a huge range of things that you can do. And why would we replicate what we've done in a physical school? You know, because we're not in a physical school. So, you know.
That's right. I think one of the questions that we often are asked is, how then where do physical schools fit in this space? And how can we sell more effectively? So I think the first answer has been the thing we've been hitting people over the head a little bit with, it is experience. So I think we've articulated what doesn't work, which is just like, hey, you did this in the physical school. Here's here's an inferior service, but pay us the same. That doesn't work. We know that. Then the second option then is, I think certainly reducing the time that's involved, if it's all online, is going to be a critical step. I mean, I think fundamentally people just will get too tired to be in a group setting doing the same thing that entire time. On top of that, when it comes to quality, and I think this is the area that I think we should spend a little bit more time on. This is something that physical schools have traditionally been fantastic at. And maybe, Tom, you'd like to talk about what are the things that happen in a physical school? And then I think actually the answer to what to do should be fairly obvious in terms of how do we convey that online?
Well, you know, I think some of you guys can actually talk to this better than I can, but we'll look at that in a minute. But what physical schools can do really well is personalize the experience and engage the learner and engage their customers, you know, in a way that people are not going to commit so much to a digital service. And I think what's interesting is watching the online offerings that have existed before this, which are very swift, very slick, and very impersonal. And what physical schools do very well is the personal, and it is cultivate that relationship. And it's very easy, for example, you can onboard all your students with minimal webinars, with minimal contact, and they will be inducted. But you can also actually make the technology work for you and spend, as a school principal, a couple of minutes, you know, on a Monday when you get a new induction of students, you can spend a couple of minutes actually chatting directly to each student. In a way that you could not do in a physical school. You know, you might stand up in front of them and say, "Hello, welcome, please don't do anything bad." You know, but now it's much easier to just kind of talk directly to them and say, "Hey, what do you want to do when you're here? Brilliant, that sounds fantastic. Do you like Led Zeppelin? No, go home," or whatever it is you want to say. And I think that building that sort of brand and building that community is a really important thing, you know. And one thing that I found really successful that I didn't imagine would be successful is the incredibly archaic, even in a physical school, doing assemblies where I would do a very brief, 3-4 minute message to students, or even discussion with a small group of students that everybody can see. So in the morning we'll say, look, this happened yesterday, which was bad, possibly, or not. I don't know. What do you reckon? This is a thing that's happening at the moment. People are talking about this. What do we think as a group about this? And that sort of kind of newsflash, kind of update, kind of community building is actually really good and really powerful online in a way that I didn't think it would be, but it is.
Yeah. From what we've seen, certainly leading up to COVID, people were only wanting more personalized experiences online. I think that was very clear from a trend point of view. I mean, regardless of how attractive it might be from a business model point of view as a school, like how many people can we put into a class? It just simply doesn't work that way online from a value position, because I would sort of be arguing like the sweet spot is really like, I mean, one-to-ones are a natural thing, because then even with an untrained teacher, you can just flow where the student really needs the help. As soon as you're into a group, you're having to either do a very one size fits all, more and more one size fits all if it's a bigger group. Even with the use of breakout rooms, which, by the way, if it's done poorly, can really distract from the overall experience. And it's actually quite a complicated thing to get right, because it's not just about teachers and putting students together. The content needs to wrap around that. The curriculum needs to be there. And that's why I was really talking about experience, because in a physical school, all this stuff is kind of lined up, and it's been built over, probably decades, where everything's from an onboarding point of view. It's like, hey, we're going to nail this, and we're going to get our students completely excited about starting. And that can be done online too, with just a little bit of creativity. When they're actually in the class, like, how do we make people feel welcome and that they have an open forum to be able to ask questions, and there's a certain amount of etiquette, and it's not crazy or mismanaged. Like, those are things that you can train people on and build systems for. And one of the things that, even if you're thinking, oh, well, things will hopefully go back to normal, it's absolutely, without a doubt, people have seen the writing on the wall with, hey, I was already thinking that online education could be good. It's actually could be really great. And maybe, and if they're not having that experience with you, then there's really something that needs to be done. And there's a whole lot you can do, and creativity comes in there, training comes in there, tools and technology can come in there. But there's nothing from, and the fact that it's online, that means that it can't be high quality, premium, well-resourced, and at a decent price that agents can also get behind.
And I think the agent point is a really good one, because the market has responded to this whole thing by, largely the agents that I'm talking to, and I don't know about the rest of you, but we'll have a look at that in a second. The agents that I'm talking to are saying to me, oh, we'll wait until it all goes back to normal, and we're not going to sell anything now because nobody will buy online. And you're kind of going, will it go back to normal, and what kind of normal will it be? But also, I think people will buy online, but I think people will probably not buy online from agents unless agents are moving with that and able to sell it. And a lot of the last 10 years of sales has been about the elephant in the room of direct bookings. So websites that are geared towards getting direct bookings, and agents who are going, why is that geared towards getting direct bookings from my market? And schools that are going, oh, sorry. And that's a really difficult conversation, and that's only going to get more difficult, and I think it's a really interesting one in terms of strategy, but it's also a really interesting one in terms of tactics, because are we able to now build relationships with agents that can go through this and go forward, or are we saying goodbye to agents?
Yeah, I mean, I've been even talking with schools that are still working really well with agents. So I do think that there's definitely optimism that there's a way forward, but both sides have to come to the table on that. Agents, again, can really help with maybe low trust markets with buying online. They can really help people get into these world-class experiences.
Now, I think agents are great, and I've had a lot of hugely positive experiences with agents in terms of reliable streams of students, and reliable streams of revenue, and reliable kind of getting rid of the headaches of working with markets that are new and all that sort of stuff. And I think agents are, a good agent is worth their weight in gold. And that's not easy to say, because some of them are quite big, but I feel like we're all right supporting agents, and I think agents do a really great job sometimes. I think I'm shocked at the moment by how a lot of agents are sitting on the fence and waiting, and you kind of think the time is now, really, isn't it?
What we're going to try and so hopefully what you've kind of taken away so far is we kind of took you through what was there. Like, as I say, online learning isn't a new thing, and we can help you. And there's going to be further webinars that even Tom and I can do, and we can send you to videos and resources to help you understand this market. But knowing that that's there, the key thing is to ask the question is, what is the experience that I'm selling, and how is that unique and different? I think one of the things we wanted to help you take away was the fact that what you're selling needs to match that experience that people are wanting to buy. And I wanted to leave you just with some sort of takeaway tips before we get into a bit more Q&A. So I'm going to just bring that up again. As I say,
I'm taking notes, liking this.
Just some actionable things that we know, really do work. So firstly is, if you're going to be online, the generic is really taken. Like, there's been schools that have been specializing in online language teaching for a very long time, and they've got all the systems nailed, but they're very generic because they've been talking to the biggest number of people at one time. And so this is where being simple and authentic can really help you stand out, just by you having your own unique voice. Tom, would you like to, just one-liners there on how people can really think about that?
I think photos of beautiful people having a lovely time are of no use to anybody. We're not the gap. I think a sort of shabby handheld phone of somebody going, "I'm here now, it's great, I'm having a brilliant time," is much more powerful.
Great, I appreciate that. Yeah, so don't be afraid of letting down it's not about a facade. People don't want facades. People want a real experience, because that's what they will trust, and that's what they'll benchmark against. Social proof. If you haven't really nailed this for your particularly if you're selling anything online, you really have to. So testimonials, whether they be written, ideally video. Sometimes the shoddier the better, because the more real they can become, and it's more about the person's enthusiasm and belief in the service that you're offering online. That's going to make this happen.
Even for myself, like the last few months, I've started putting little videos on LinkedIn, for example, of 30 seconds of me talking about sometimes a really interesting work thing, sometimes my bookshelf, and what's interesting to me is that I'll always get a raft of connections from that, and I'll always get work from that. And the reason that people seem to like that is because it's very clearly me. Some people obviously don't like me from that, don't hire me, but some people do, and I think that's a lot better than not hiring me. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's very true for school.
Agreed. So definitely work on your social proof, and particularly on this online part. One of the things that I did want to kind of bring up was, if you're not offering free trials, particularly if you are trying to do some, and look, there's got to be a resilience factor in terms of language schools having part of their business come to them directly and part of it through agents. I mean, even with an online perspective, we see this as a really future-proofing exercise, and I think having a diversity of ways that you get customers is really important for your own business health. But likewise, if you were to have people coming to your site, rather than pushing them straight to a payment gateway where it's like, hey, pay $500 and you can get into our course, free trials are a really important way of building up trust and getting people familiar with and comfortable with learning online and what your professional quality version of online language teaching is looking like. In terms of a call to action, this is one that really works online, and it really does help fast track a person's buying decisions. Questions, and ideally we'd love if a few of you might even put your hand up, and we'll enable the microphone and actually have a bit more of a discussion, which I think everyone would find a bit more valuable.
Brilliant. Good. If nobody volunteers and puts their hand up, I will just bully people in the nicest possible way and select you. So
we've even got a couple of hands up. Maybe we could use the hands up as a first. I'm going to allow Mariana and Daniel Rojas to talk if Brilliant. They would like to tell us a little bit about their school.
Can you put their cameras on as well, Alex?
Hello.
Possibly.
Because
Unsure.
Daniel is a particularly good-looking chap. So
I think
the world
maybe we
would
should just
benefit.
take your word for it. I think Daniel, at the moment, you've never looked so good. Everyone's just imagining.
It's like a young Robert Redford. Think of that.
Ladies first. Ladies first. Mariana can go ahead. Yeah.
Mariana.
Daniel, why don't you lead the charge?
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead then. Well, first of all, I'm going to make something clear. Tom, I still have way more hair than you. That's for sure.
So mean. I have less hair because I worked with you. All right, this is your fault.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I can see that. Actually, my question is a bit about channels. I work with the Manhattan language, and we have been trying to reach out. Online classes for us is new. It's a new thing for us. So we have been trying to reach out the audience for potential customers for online classes through pretty much the regular channels. We have been communicating with agents. We have been in e-missions, virtual missions. We have been doing Google Ads campaigns. So I'm not sure if we are missing something about the channels. What you guys would suggest is a good channel to reach out to this audience that could be interested in the online courses.
Yes. Yeah, I've got a really powerful thing is setting up webinars either via LinkedIn or via Goodwall or places where students are using and offering webinars in things that you are expert in. So for example, Danielle, you could be offering webinars on graphic design or webinars on internships or webinars on language learning, because you have, any school will have experts in those things there. And you're suddenly getting a lot of people will interact with you, and you're getting traffic and you're getting traction to your site through that. So people have to register through your site, and you're offering those free, and it's like a free trial, really. You can talk about anything that you have expertise in. David, for example, could talk about his expertise with cars. It doesn't have to be about schools. It doesn't have to be about languages. People will listen and people will come to that. And that's 30 minutes of your time. And it's, 15, 20, 30, 40 people who didn't know your name. So that's a good thing.
That's great. Thank you. Good to see you, Tom.
Yeah, I'll also come from a different angle as well. Is if you're, the first thing is is your product great? Is your experience great? And it's not to demean anyone, but if what you're selling is not hitting home and is not wowing those students, then it's hard to sell that. So you can either go for, I need to get more leads, or I need to convert more leads, or I need to really satisfy my students' learning expectations. And then using that social proof, using those sort of trust mechanisms to be able to make people feel comfortable with purchasing. And that might even be agents as well. Like, what are you offering to agents that can help them feel trust? Like, are you doing any recordings? And to be fair, you don't even need a special system to do a recording of a class of yours. But people are going to want to know what that looks like, just as they know what the physical school looks like, that you've got a beautiful reception. And then when you come through the beautiful reception, you've got a nice welcoming person that maybe gives you a bit of personal attention, makes you feel at home. And then you go into a particular class at the right time, and it's a nice looking room. There's good equipment. The tools are there. The teachers are trained, and those sorts of things. So again, I think you can learn a lot from your own physical school, and maybe look at how you can improve that experience online as well.
And I think also doing that thing of having very basic stuff about guest stars. If you are able to invite students through an online medium into the actual physical classroom, both groups benefit a great deal from that and see a really great new side of it. But also the thing about contacting, for example, teachers associations in different countries and offering them free webinars and teacher training from your pool of great teachers is really good, because you're suddenly getting access and it's free, and you're out there and you're showing people what you've got. Do you know what I mean? And I think also what I find really interesting is the amount of schools that have spent a lot of money trying to go online, and they've kind of gone, oh, we'll chuck it all on, Zoom, whatever else it is, which are all perfectly good, but they're not yours. and they don't look like you, and they're not your experience, they're a very generic experience, and you're sort of reliant on somebody else's part of a platform, you know, and you're sending students hopeful kind of, you know, links to a thing that might possibly work. And I think what's really nice is having a kind of platform that is yours and is branded and does look like you and makes you look good and makes you look worth money. And that seems to be quite a powerful thing, I think, you know, and it brings in what's good about a physical school in terms of being the place you hang out, the place you work, and the place you learn. So I've got a lot to shout about that, to be honest.
We're going to pass it on to Mariana next.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Before, I think I had a little bit trouble unmuting my own microphone.
Yeah, perfectly.
No, I just thank you guys for this. I just want to touch base a little bit with possibilities, talk a little bit more about the possibilities of exploring new markets when we're talking about online sales, online programs. And if you guys have any more specific tips about exploring markets that a physical school is not yet used to having, that may for many different reasons, either I don't know, visa troubles for that destination, or that destination not being a very quite popular one for that specific market. And what do you guys think about it? If social media campaigns or online campaigns are more, you know, the way to go, or exploring new, possible new partnerships in that place would be like on the first, you know, approach, or
Yeah, it's a great question, Mariana. The thing I think for me is that it's a lot cheaper to do it online. You know, you're not having to fly anywhere and try and, you know, be there physically to see what. It doesn't cost you that time. It doesn't cost you that money. So you can say, Tuesday morning, I'm spending 3 hours and I'm going to crack Iran. And you can also start getting students from places like Iran or places where visas would be difficult, because suddenly you're, you know, you're able to actually just contact them and you're able to get those students in, and they don't need a visa, you know. So it's quite powerful and quite exciting new times. And I think also things like working out which search engine you're going with. So if you're working in a Cyrillic speaking, well, you know, a Cyrillic alphabet using market, are you going to be putting ads through Yandex, you know, because Google isn't used? Are you going to be using Baidu, or, you know, other language specific search engines? And that's a great question for Herbert, who's doing a talk on marketing specifically next Wednesday at the same time, who I certainly learned a lot from. So I would very much recommend doing that. But you know, all I would say is, you know, markets that were previously totally inaccessible or impractical are now totally accessible. You know, we can get students from Bhutan, because why would we not? Be ace, you know.
Yeah, I'll sort of I guess what I would be looking at is, how do you use online language teaching? And it can really be a bookend for your physical school. So either for some markets, it's going to be a complete replacement. Like maybe you are not actually able to get that person physically over to your school, in which case that can create a great new opportunity for you.
Yeah.
Others, it's more like you will use it as a way of either adding value or even ideally preparing that student to actually enter your physical school. So I think, first of all, that's valuable, even if it was just an introductory point of view. But I think you could really have somebody get a lot more out of your physical experience by being prepared and knowing what that experience might look like, starting with the online experience, doing a great experience with you in that country. And then beyond that is having a lifetime learner. And I think this is going to become an increasingly important part of physical language schools businesses, because that's where it's just like a bank account. Like the more students that will be leaving you, instead of you saying goodbye, now I need a new one, you can actually kind of build up this base and this resilience with online being another part of your business and offering some diversity there.
And a lot of people really want the idea that they kind of, their language skills are red hot when they're in the country and when they're doing everything in the language, and then suddenly they're at home and they're not doing that anymore. But if they can use you as a kind of gym, you know, that they clock in and they do a session and they are kind of up to speed again, and then they can go back to their daily lives and come back to you. And it doesn't maybe generate a huge amount of revenue, but it's a lot better than none. and it's also a way of getting ambassadors to promote you in other places, and that's huge, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Bo, has anyone else got a question that we can answer, or otherwise even just a theme that you'd like us to talk a little bit more about?
Or a song you'd like us to sing?
Thom is very good at singing.
I'm rubbish at singing, I'll be honest. It's embarrassing, but I am rubbish. Can I pick on a brave volunteer? Because I did notice a couple of names there that I wanted to ask if we could have a bit of input. So could I ask, actually, could I ask Nicole Kostromon? Nicole, can you hear us? And would you like to talk to us?
I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna allow you to talk. You don't have to, but Thom is gonna put peer pressure on you. So
gently, in the nicest possible.
That's
way.
okay.
Can you
Can you
hear me?
We sure can.
I have a bit of an odd question, and it's based off of your idea if we make our school more personalized. If we're all doing the same personalization, would that make us less unique, or would it change the market somehow? Maybe this is too far into the future.
Great question.
So I think the first thing is this, where the market at the moment for a lot of online teaching is not particularly personalized, particularly in terms of if you're going head to head against the people maybe you should be worried about, the people that have a lot of funding, have a lot of experience teaching online. Most of the time they're focusing on systems, streamlining everything, and therefore that makes them more and more general in that way. In terms of being personalized, you can't, like this, that's the same reason that there's huge demand for one-to-one tutoring, because people want something that's in it for them. So it's not something that can go away. Where it devalues is where it's not genuine personalization. Like if you're kind of saying we're going to personalize it and then you don't deliver on that personal aspect, that's where I think it can be eroded. And that's where maybe you can have ways of ensuring that personalization. So for example, let's say that you were originally only going to offer group classes because that was for whatever reason you felt that was the most viable option. Even just sprinkling in some one-to-one classes and really considering why and what those one-to-one sessions might be about can really help you stand out and show real value. The other way to look at it as well is around the specialization. So you're right. If what you're saying is this, hey, if you're a human being anywhere in the world and you want any kind of language teaching, we'll personalize to your needs. I think that is probably going to, again, you'll be 100% right. If everyone did that, then no one's going to really kind of see that as something unique. Whereas if you go, hey, if you're from, I don't know, I'm going to pick some, if you're from Kazakhstan, or even let's choose something that's a bit more normal, like you're from Japan. We actually are we're really experienced working with Japanese students. We really understand you. We really know what works for you. And we're going to provide these little personalized sessions where you can feel comfortable and confident in these particular areas, because we know that these are the areas that you've previously had issues with in the past, and you're going to have a great experience with us. Like that, I think, is a way you can turn personalization into a real tool and a separator.
I think I agree with that. And I think I'd add, for me, what feels authentic in terms of running a school and in terms of language learning is always a bit scary. So I feel like if I'm doing something that makes me feel a bit frightened, you know, in terms of a publicity campaign, in terms of social media content, or in terms of methodology, if I feel like it's a bit scary, it might go horribly wrong, then I feel like I'm generally on the right track. And that seems to have worked, you know, career-wise. You know, the times when I feel like it's smooth and I know exactly what's happening and I know what's coming are when I feel like I'm not really delivering much. And so, yeah, fear, I think a slight edge of fear. I don't mean, you know, blind panic, white knuckle, oh my God, you know, I just mean a slight edge of fear. I'm thinking, is this a good idea?
Great. Thank you for that, Nicole. If there was does anyone have a question, or are we going to go on rolling attacks from Thom, picking people off one by one?
I mean, I could never do that. I'd never do that. But I will now say, when I'm looking now at, hang on, we've got oh, people are leaving because they know I'm going to choose them. Oh, can I ask David? David's actually got a really interesting experience of having gone from a provider to a school. David, if you're there, can you hear us, David?
Yes, yes. I was hoping I had registered under a fake name, but that didn't work. So you did pick me out. Is Mariana still here? Maybe. Okay.
Mariana Mello, yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, we both work at VGC. I think we have quite a lot of people from VGC attending today, because we always find it very interesting, and it's very nice to have to receive opinions from specialists about the things that we are doing right. I was happy to tick that yes, the students need to buy the outcome and the experience, but also you also need to show proof, testimonials, and so forth. And I think for a lot of schools, the cost of success for online training is very great if you don't get it right the first time around, because students can be quite fickle, and if you fail at showing proofs that the courses are nicely organized and professionally run, and that all the students are at the same level and they can all interact, they are not going to go back to the school. They will move on to another school. So the cost of failure is great, but the reward is amazing. And when we launched some of the online courses, we were debating, is this just a fad or are they going to stay? And we've concluded that they will stay. So if you invest, even if you have to invest at the start, it is a long-term investment and it will be successful.
That is great. Yeah, and really good to hear some optimism. And also, again, I feel like that's the difference between wanting to make this work compared to just needing this to work. And I think that does jump onto one thing I would like to bring up is this is partly why group classes have been very difficult for most online schools to function, is the ability to get the right people in the right room. So what happens if you don't have enough people coming in, or you don't have a way of qualifying people to come in? Then you get either very small groups, which then maybe break your business model, or you get big numbers of people in the class, but of all different ranges and abilities. And cultures is not the problem, but certainly the idea of having lots of different levels in the same class can really create a massive challenge for teachers.
It's a huge mistake.
So I think if you've got ways of consistently getting the same kinds of people in the classes, that's a really important part. And again, that often means that you do need to be a bit brave and specialize enough so that you're getting enough people in that pool, and then be able to create the right number of classes and set them with the right teachers and content.
Definitely. I mean, I think what's really exciting about the online offering, and we've said this before, Alex, is the idea that we are seeing a real change in the dynamic of the classroom. So we're not seeing, we're seeing a real kind of egalitarian approach to understanding that, teachers can teach, but learners have to learn. And online, there's nowhere to hide. You can't hide at the back of the class, because you can, as we've just proved here, you can single people out and make them talk. And, here, obviously, it's a very different thing because we've got, all of you are experts and all of you have got worthy things to contribute. And in a classroom, that's not always the case, often including the teacher. But we're moving away from that kind of physical thing of having an expert in the room, and it's centering on the teacher. And that learner experience is valuable and is authentic, and students are responding really well to that. And I think what you've seen in the last couple of months is a lot of students who never would have learned online, who have, and who are going, actually, that's great, I really enjoyed that. And a lot of people who were shy and a lot of people who were not able to join in are participating. And a lot of teachers who hated it with a passion are now going, this is amazing, I can wear pajamas all day and I don't have to commute, and this is fantastic, and I can smoke in class, it's like it's 1996 again. I never smoked in class apart from once to show a group of students on a Greek island about the evils of smoking, but it didn't work because I sparked a cigarette up, expecting them all to look horrified, and they didn't because all their teachers smoked in class. I digress. But it's exciting times, is what I'm saying.
Sure is. One thing that I think is quite clear, though, is this is very much about resilience and very much about having a future-looking school versus a regressive-looking school. And I think students and even agents are going to be looking at this. And if I was an agent, or if I was a student, I'm going to be picking one that I feel like, hey, look, if we had any kind of issue like we're having right now, by the way, and we're still not out of things, I would want to know that they've got a really professional, great experience for me to fall back on, or for me to join in right now because I've got a particular need to solve. So again, lots of reasons to be optimistic about online. And I think lots more room for, I don't think schools need to feel like everything's been done. I think a lot of things have been done in terms of streamlining things and getting systems. But in terms of personalizing and showing creativity in the classroom, there is so much more that could be done. And I think certainly LearnCube, with our virtual classroom, we're really excited about the experiences we can create.
Can I just say, and I don't work for LearnCube, so I'm allowed to say this, but I like doing these with Alex because I think he's clever and I can bask in the glory of his clever. But I also like the LearnCube thing because it does a lot of things that I feel are really important about bringing the kind of soul of a school online. So, you know, I'm saying that as a kind of impartial observer. And those of you that know me will know I've been in this industry forever. And I do like that. And I do like that kind of thing. And I think, you know, appearing next to Alex, for me, I wouldn't do that if I thought it was rubbish. So also, and the other tip here is that if you want to think about what you're doing online, talk to Alex because he knows a lot about what has been the kind of history of the online world in terms of teaching, and he'll generally tell it to you for free because he wants to sell you something. So if you do nothing other than ask him about his expertise and ask him to look at what you're doing, he'll probably do it for free. So, you know, try that. That's my tip.
Yeah, no, we'd love to help you all, and I think we're definitely looking at ways. We're calling it LearnCube University, and we are looking at ways of providing resources both for owners, managers, teachers, and as a way of really, you know, that's our contribution back, and how also to elevate the quality of language learning, which is what we want to do. So thank you all for joining us today.